Gentleman from Texas, Mr. Goldman, is now recognized. 5 minutes.
Thank you. I know one of the canons for federal judges, and of course it's been discussed that it is probably unconstitutional for another branch or even lower judges to prepare canons of ethics that bind the Supreme Court. But canon number 4 says in part, a judge should not participate in extrajudicial activities that reflect adversely on the judge's impartiality. Mr. Paoletta, can you think of judges on the Supreme Court that have given indications, in addition to just the ones you mentioned in your testimony, of where they're going to go on rulings?
I think I have a little bit more faith in justices in terms of speaking before groups and not it affecting their decision making. But I do point out in my written testimony that Justice Ginsburg never recused from a case from the National Organization of Women when they filed amicus briefs, despite her serving on the board of NOW in the 1970s. She donated an autographed copy of her VMI opinion to be auctioned off for a fundraiser for the NOW PAC. She spoke in 2004 at a lecture named after her for the NOW Legal Defense Fund, and 2 weeks before that lecture, she voted in favor of a position advocated by the NOW Legal Defense Fund in an amicus brief. So we can talk about the justices, but Justice Ginsburg never seems to come up in terms of the concerns about a justice doing political things or entering the political fray. As I said in my oral testimony, she literally entered the 2016 presidential campaign to stop Donald Trump from being president of the United States. That was her intended purpose. I think that's unprecedented in modern times.
I do recall that. And it is interesting, though, if you're a liberal justice on the Supreme Court and family members even participate in a brief before the court, well, you're fine. That's okay. We don't see that as any problem. But let me tell you, when you come in here and you talk about the credibility to attack Justice Thomas, and he is the only name that you mention, you have credibility problems. That's just the way it is. And let me also tell you, one of the most far-reaching opinions ever issued, in my opinion, by the Supreme Court was the Obergefell case that really forced on states that they must recognize same-sex marriage. Well, here's an article that talks about, and of course, argument in the case, April 28, 2015, was decided June 26, 2015. In May, Justice Ginsburg presided over a same-sex wedding in advance of the Supreme Court's decision. And in fact, when she pronounced the marriage, as the New York Times reported, not that we can trust them, but that she said, quote, with a sly look and special emphasis on the word Constitution, Justice Ginsburg said that she was pronouncing the two men married by the powers vested in her by the Constitution of the United States, unquote. It would seem to me that that was giving an indication, to quote the Canon 4, that of what the judge's feelings were on that case. And not one of you ever brought that up. That didn't bother anybody at all, even though it was such a far-reaching case. Justice Thomas knows what all of my very conservative, dear black friends know is nobody is treated more brutally in this country than a conservative black. And it's just like Justice Thomas said at his hearing. He was the victim of a high-tech lynching, and I would submit anyone that continues that abuse is further contributing. No, is further contributing to the same high-tech lynching. Yes, I've got 7 seconds.
I just want, can I just clarify on this?
quick. Four.
This photo that's been mentioned a couple of times, I think it's in Gabe's list and all that. That photo that Justice Thomas appeared in with Herschel Walker was part of a group that he hosts at the Supreme Court, the Horatio Alger Association, of which he's a member, and of which Herschel Walker was just inducted, okay? It's an incredible organization with people across the political spectrum, of people who have overcome difficult circumstances, and they have a reception up at the Supreme Court. That's why he was taking a photo with Herschel Walker. It wasn't related to his
Herschel's
campaign.
a conservative too. That's
Gentleman's
his point.
time has
Yield back.
expired. Now go to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Jeffries, for 5 minutes.
I thank the distinguished chair for your leadership, for convening this hearing. I thank all the witnesses, particularly Professor Gillers from my alma mater, NYU. Great to see you, and thank you for your presence here today. You know, my distinguished colleague from Texas just made the observation that Justice Thomas has been subjected to a high-tech lynching. It's quite extraordinary. And I believe, Mr. Paoletta, you've echoed a similar sentiment. I think your quote is, "Many on the left hate Justice Thomas because he is a black conservative who has never bowed to those who demand that he must think a certain way because of the color of his skin." What evidence do you have to support that incendiary charge?
When Chairman Benny Thompson calls him an Uncle Tom because of his views on voter ID and affirmative action, when in fact more black Americans support voter ID and with respect to affirmative action in college education, they're 62% opposed to it. So that is the most vile, disgusting thing you can say. And so yes, that's the evidence. That's the evidence that I just gave you.
Reclaiming my time.
Yes.
There are a lot of vile, disgusting things that can be
Well, you just
said.
asked me for an example.
The notion that is, right, when some members on this side of the aisle and others have been called the N-word throughout different points of our life, belies the point that you have a particular bias. And it's an overstatement, which is not surprising when you look at the balance of your testimony. And if Chairman Benny Thompson has an observation to make, he's entitled to free speech. You apparently believe that Jenny Thomas, regardless of how many conflicts she has, is entitled to her own political opinions as well.
Can I give you another example?
No. Let me go to Professor Sherman and Mr. Roth, because this notion that Clarence Thomas is being singled out because he's a black conservative, whatever that means, I think is belied by the fact that if you look at example after example, there seems to be troubling instances where he's making rulings in cases where his wife has a clear interest. I think in 2010, Jenny Thomas was the president and CEO of a dark money group called Liberty Central. Stood to benefit from the outcome of the Citizens United decision. Mr. Roth, did Justice Thomas recuse himself from that case?
He did not.
Okay, that same group apparently paid Jenny Thomas $120,000 per year to actively lobby for the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. She was paid to try to bring about an outcome that was at issue in the National Federation of Independent Business versus Sebelius case. Mr. Roth, did Justice Thomas recuse himself from that case?
He did not, nor any of the other Obamacare cases.
In 2017, a group called the Center for Security Policy filed an amicus brief with the Supreme Court to support Trump's outrageous Muslim ban. Now, at the same time that amicus brief was filed, Jenny Thomas was being paid roughly $200,000 in consulting fees, according to IRS documents. Did Justice Thomas recuse himself from that case, Trump v. Hawaii?
He did not.
And then we've got the most recent example in a parade of horribles. It's interesting how my friends want to focus on Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, may she rest in peace. We got someone who's actually on the Supreme Court right now making decisions actively in cases where his wife has clear interests. Text messages reveal that Ginny Thomas was in active communication with the former White House Chief of Staff as it relates to perpetuating the big lie that Donald Trump somehow won the 2020 election, notwithstanding no evidence to suggest that in fact is true, and was involved in trying to push this forward. There's a case that takes place to try to produce those communications with Mark Meadows in the White House. And Justice Thomas is the only justice who decides that those documents should not be released. His wife's documents should not be released. Every other conservative justice in that case voted that those documents should be released. Do you think it might have been appropriate for Justice Thomas to recuse himself in that particular case?
Yes, his wife's interests were clearly implicated in that case.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your testimony. I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you.